Welcome. Thank you for coming to the Nidus Anarchy series. I think you're the official first third-party interview, so I'm pretty excited because I've
Oh,
been wanting to do this for a long time. I've just never been committing the time to it. So thank you for coming because this is awesome. This is what I want to be doing. I want to be talking. Like, people have got to be tired of listening to me talk. So I'd much
nah.
rather be hearing from other people that are out there doing really awesome stuff. So with that, Josh Hammer from Oracle, you're a field chief cloud security architect.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Yeah, the field part is probably the first part to explain. So I work in the North America Cloud Engineering Organization. And basically, we are the ones that work directly with customers to basically help them adopt Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which I will call OCI going forward.
Okay.
And my role is to kind of help, I guess, structure our kind of story on how to secure and manage the cloud. So if you think about shared responsibility model, there's the customer side and then there's the Oracle side.
Mhm.
Our team works on, explaining Oracle side. Obviously, that's an important part. But the most important part to me is where the rubber meets the road, and it's where the customers need to do their spot. So my team is really the ones that are kind of spearheading architectures, design paradigms, patterns, even technology to help customers more quickly and more securely adopt Oracle Cloud. And it's kind of cool because at Oracle, our approach is different because we're a little late. So it's about trying to be a bit more prescriptive.
Mhm.
And, we've all been consultants, and the best question is there's 10 different ways, and I'll give you all of them, and that's a billable thing. We're trying to say, like, you should do it this way. If you don't want to, okay, these are the things, but we'll give you like a couple of ways that we recommend. And that's
Okay.
been a really fun thing. So,
So before Oracle, you were at
yeah.
AWS before that, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what made you make the jump from AWS to Oracle,
Yeah, that was
or
a
back to
great
Oracle, I should
question.
say?
But yeah, I did. I was so I left Oracle during cloud, the first cloud. I wasn't a fan of it at the time, and Gen 2 was just starting.
Okay.
And I was working with a few folks that were trying to really build a cloud security story for Oracle, and it was about like how to get audit reports going, like the basic stuff, like even data center visits, which we're like it'll eventually have to happen, with the right to audit that's come out. But I realized that we weren't getting much traction, and I wanted to actually double down on cloud security architecture. So I saw this role at AWS, and I applied for it, and I got it. And it was in their professional services organization, which I found was
Oh.
rather entertaining. So I was there for a year, actually working with like CPG kind of, consumer product group companies, financial services, telecom, really helping them get onto AWS. So like mostly hands-on implementation. I had to write Java again. That was really bad for me. Um,
I'm glad you're part of the anti-Java crew. I'm gonna get like a patch made. I'm gonna mail them out to
I will,
everybody.
I will, I had to write. I'm like, I need someone to review my code because it works, but I have no idea what I've done wrong here.
Yeah. That's
Um,
what when people are like, do you know Java? I'm like, technically.
yes,
It's like
exactly.
I don't want to use it, and it's just good enough, is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. And then like after a year, I started doing a lot of work with partners. Actually, you met Tim through that.
Mhm.
So I one of the companies I was working for was using Evident IO, and we started to see all these really cool like cloud security vendors coming out in the security space, trying to help customers with configuration or with operating systems, or even I've seen some do crazy stuff with directories again, because those still exist, and managing workstations. So I was like, I wanted to go play with those guys because to me, the partners, the software, we at Oracle we call them
Yeah.
ISVs, but the people like that are building cool security software and then trying
Yeah.
to get it to work with the cloud. So I worked with those guys for about 2 years with like Palo Alto Networks,
Oh, cool.
Checkpoint, yeah, Evident, which was eventually acquired by them. Trend Micro, who's surprisingly like I actually am very impressed with their agent, and I
Hmm.
have been for a long time since I've been there. Yeah, and then what happened is a bunch of the people that I used to work with at Oracle reached out and said, "Hey, we're trying to build out that kind of customer side of the shared responsibility model stuff. Do you want to come over and help and kind of build out that team?" And I'm like, "Cool. Like, I like to build. I was building some stuff there, but here I can build a team. Never did that before, so I figured I'd come over
So
and
what do you
learn."
think about Oracle Cloud now?
Um, I'm happily surprised by it.
Okay.
You're an identity person. I think if you've written AWS policy, like everyone loves JSON,
Yeah.
and you can kind of parse it to figure out. But I looked at Oracle's policy language, which was what actually was what incentivizes me to come over. The guy that was hiring me is like, play with it first before you come over.
Okay.
So he gave me an account and I was playing with him. Like, oh my God, the policy language is structured like a SQL statement. I don't really know why Oracle picked a SQL language, but it's like allow this group or principal type to and then the verb types like FRUD style, followed by the scope, and then followed by whatever the actual detailed resources are that you can condition with a where clause. And I'm like, I can read this and I can understand it. Auditing, it's a whole separate story. I can read it and I can explain it. And I really like that. And then I thought they did one thing really well, which was like, if you dealt with AWS, since there was nothing there, they're like, we need to provide guidance. And I was like able to make stuff prescriptive. And we've done a lot to basically not charge for what we consider like fundamental security, which for Oracle to me was a huge shift. I mean,
well, they're definitely making a big push on trying to get clients ramped into their cloud offering. I mean,
yeah,
I was working with a project with OIM, some Air Force stuff where they're all Oracle Cloud everything. And it's like, that was my first real foray into playing with Oracle Cloud. I've been in AWS forever. So it's like, it works, but it seems like it's a lot more overhead to get simple things done. Is it just because I don't know what I'm doing yet?
it's a mix, right? I think part of what and this is kind of, and it's funny, I've actually seen that with certain contracts and other projects. To help with that, my team, we built something called the Center for Internet Security OCI Landing Zone. And we created, like, the biggest problem with OCI is like, if you don't want to operate as the administrator, which I mean is easy for you not to operate on in your personal world, but not works in reality. The roles and permissions, they had some samples, but they weren't rich yet. We have better examples now. So we actually built that out. We built out that kind of structure you needed with those policies, and we test to make sure those operational users can do what they want to do. So once I've done that, I felt like it became a lot easier. And then the other thing I needed to learn is that for some reason, all of our Linux OSs, which is where I ran into it, we always disable like everything but SSH on the freaking firewall. So I always need to remember to like disable, 443, 8080, whatever, 1521 I'm like, what? It's weird. It's always that way. But
is there any migration scripts or anything from, or people like that want to move from AWS or Azure into Oracle? Like, look, you have these CDKs, you throw them through this awesome Python script, and now you got this magic thing that creates everything for you in Oracle.
I would love that. I think that would be sick to do. Dude,
I'm gonna give you that one. You run with it, say it's your idea, and let me know when it works, and I'll come test it out for you.
I know some people working on trying to solve the arbitrage cloud problem, like arbitraging cost across cloud, and then having the ability to seamlessly migrate it. So like figure out who has the cheaper of the service in the region, whatever it is, and then run that stuff there, and then keep,
So I think the future of that is going to be leveraging all the clouds at once and migrating your instances or clusters, like Kubernetes clusters, if you're even more that dynamic, to just spinning up those clusters in Google, Oracle, Azure, whatever, based on the time of day, the usage load, and all that kind of stuff dynamically. So this way, it's like right now, Oracle's the cheapest to run this stuff because for some reason in Japan, it's cheaper for them to run. But then once we hit prime time, 9 a.m., we're going to flip over to Amazon. And if provision and deprovision and move those DNS records around, I think now you'll have a massively flexible, scalable, and highly available redundant system. So you don't have to worry about, oh, Amazon went down. Well, Netflix is just down. It's like, that's not acceptable. you know?
It's exactly it. I mean, I think that is the dream. I think, and that's, I'm starting to see parts of it, in organizations that have built overlays kind of approaches, right? They try to overlay the API integration. We use Terraform, which I guess will now be called OpenTofu. If you haven't seen the news on that, but
I have not. When did that happen?
Oh yeah. So Terraform and HashiCorp, they tried to go. I think, long story short, now that there's a public version, there's an open source version of Terraform called OpenTofu.
Okay.
Because I think Terraform was trying to kind of consolidate it into a non-open source project. So that's happened. So now when you call it Terraform, you have to call it OpenTofu. It's taken over by the Linux Foundation. So, it'll be, other than the naming, will be very well cared for going forward. So you just have to, as long as they don't mess with my mop tofu when I order it, I'll be okay.
Then you're good to go.
Yeah.
So let's go back to some old crazy shit. You used to work at Mycroft.
Yes.
So what was your experience like there? Because I think to me, Mycroft is like the breeding ground of all the DGen IDM people. For some reason, we all started there or we all touched there at one point. You know, everyone knows Sam, everyone knows John. It's like we all
Yep.
had this weird thing that happened to us at Mycroft. So what was your experience like there?
I think Mycroft was actually it was the most interesting experience of any company I worked at. It had like, it was always trying to do everything. That's what I thought was kind of cool. Like we were trying to do development, we were trying to build products and offer services. I remember that was the first place I started using AWS
Mhm.
cloud because we were trying to run a managed service for like a bunch. So I think it was very interesting, but it was also almost like a family. So
Yeah.
like you could watch like the dysfunctional fights go on too, which was so amazing. It's just like,
Oh yeah,
oh my God, it's mom and dad, you know?
they're fighting
Um,
again.
Yep. But yeah, I honestly I learned a lot there. The people there are just so great. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, I still see Sam. I haven't seen John in forever, but every conference I generally will see Sam flying one way or the other, coming in or out, doing like he's always does. And then
I was out in
yeah.
California, and my cousin, he races motorcycles, so we're out there in
Oh,
Ventura. We're just hanging out, bullshitting. And then I'm talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, you know, it's funny is this guy I used to work with, he's big into motorcycle racing now,
yeah,
and I think he's
John's
even like
huge in that.
sponsoring some teams or something. And he's like, oh, who is it? I might know him. I was like, oh, his name's John Freeman. He's like, wait, this guy? And just pulls up on his phone. He's like, oh yeah, we work with him all the time. I'm like, what? Like this is
Wow.
bizarre. So yeah, so like it came full circle. Like all of a sudden, 10 years later, John Freeman's back in my family's life.
That's amazing. Oh man, I remember he got like the Ford GT40. I think I was so jealous of that. I think it
Oh
was
yeah,
that. Yeah. Oh man.
yeah.
He.
Ferraris and
Yeah.
motorcycle racing are like his thing.
Yeah. It's
So now, in the
definitely cool.
future sense, where do you see cloud security is going to go? Like, what do you see? What do you think is going to be the biggest threat in the next 3 to 5 years? And how can
Hmm.
people start preparing for that now?
Well, I mean, people I think are the biggest threat still. But you know, I guess what I see, and this is like the thing that scares me the most, is this. How do I say this? Organizations that are still using kind of somewhat legacy style review processes
Hmm.
in the cloud. The kind
Okay.
of, you know, and I think the inability to accelerate their adoption is the problem. And the other thing that I'm seeing, and this is where like I talk to a lot of like organizations, there's a learning curve. And I think where the biggest problems is going to come is that there are people, and you know, we use a lot of people use the console. I use the console sometimes when I'm lazy,
Yeah.
that are just console jockeys, and they will not write a line of code, will not do anything. And I think that is going to be the fear to me. Like I'm basically afraid that someone's going to type something into chat GPT because they don't know how to do something. It's going to give
Yep.
them some code. They're going to execute it, and they're not actually going to know what their code did in their environment because they always use
Oh
the
yeah.
console. And it's going to
It's
like
I think it's funny
blow
that you
stuff
say
up.
that because I think you just touched on something I've thought about for a while now. So remember, like there was like Google poisoning, where basically you go out and just make a bunch of garbage spam sites that all have the
Yeah.
same link, they're the same type of bogus article or bogus statement that you want to be true, and then Google just because it's out there and so prolific, then Google just says, "Oh, this must be true," and ranks it high. And someone did it as a joke. I forget what it was back in the day, but they basically said like George Washington wasn't the first president or something, and it became truth because just so many sites said so. And ChatGPT and all these AI models are just learning off data that's out there. So I think AI poisoning is going to be something that's going to be the next on the radar that's no one's even talking about right now, is just poisoning the data sets that are out there for these AI models to learn from. So now all of a sudden you're like, hey, look, if I feed it all this misinformation, AI is going to dump it out. People are idiots. They're just going to copy and paste it like you're saying and not run it at all. And all of a sudden this code is going to have some weird little injection in there that you don't even know about, import some library that's got some vulnerability that's known and was promoted on
It's
purpose. This way it gets plastered everywhere, and now they have a bot that can just go around and do whatever they want,
yeah.
be as malicious as hell.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it. Like you see, like I love that, you know, VS Code has the what autopilot or ever to help you code out. But I mean, it's just yeah, and but I've seen good uses of it too. I've seen
Yeah,
a lot of like error messages, like using AI to interpret error messages that you get from Java. Those would also be helpful.
yeah.
And then telling you how to mitigate them. One of the guys I work with did a demo of that in it. But yeah, I'm afraid that a lot of people don't want to commit to learn it and want to bring their legacy practices. Like I think it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like when we went from mainframe to distributed. Like we had to change a lot of things. And I think this is honestly, to me, the cloud is going back to mainframe. And I think as identity folks, it's actually kind of soothing,
Okay.
because mainframe was like a monolith, but it gave you a universal centralized identity control, which the cloud does, right? It tells you the language. You know, we had to RACF or TSS, but you got forced to work in this model with these restrictions, with these controls. And I think there's something as an identity person you can kind of quickly glom onto as like, oh, this is great. I can actually really control this and really scope it the way I've always wanted to. Whereas like a distributed system, it's like, please, like I mean, how many like random authorization tools products work, like Axiomatics and Bitku or whatever, that never just took off. So every app wrote their own and you rolled it in. So I think it's going to be an interesting
So
space with the
do
changes.
you think the future is going to be more of the same of consolidated single source of identity, or do you think we're going to move more towards decentralized self-sovereign identity?
I probably would say a bit more of the centralized I'd say it's going to be more of the distributed sovereign identity.
Okay.
But I think we're going to start to see, I mean, this is unrelated to I mean, this is not outside of Oracle's opinion, but I honestly think that eventually governments are going to step up in the identity space.
Okay.
You
How
know,
so?
well, I mean, and I think
What
like if
scary
you think
way? What
about,
do I need to be paranoid about?
well, I don't know about scary, but here's the biggest thing, right? Like think about banking, right? Every bank decides to maintain a record of me, you know, and at the end of the day, probably the only thing that they got right all the time because they had to run my credit check was my social security number. And, you know, they might have like my middle initial or they might have my middle name, depending on what's there. I think the government could kind of resolve it, like the US Postal Service being a universal identity provider. Because I think there's like a lot of stuff that we do with the government where we have to interact with them that it's really hard for them to identify you. So I would really like them to step up in the digital identity space. And this isn't for enterprise. This is for like just
Personal use.
operating personal use.
Like
And also
revamp
giving you,
SSN altogether. Like, that you can't change it if it gets jacked, then you're screwed for life. Like that's ridiculous. That's so antiquated.
yeah. I would like, public private key infrastructure or something like that. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the right approach, but something where, I have this is me, I keep it with me and it validates me. And I think it makes it easier then for like, banks, they don't have to hold SSN anymore, right? If they need to go pull it. And then I can control who has access to it. I can dynamically generate these off of my shared key. I can create my own keychain to manage it. And I have more say over not only just my identity, but my data then too. So I think I'd like to see us go there. I'd like to see I'd like to see Apple win in a way, like, all right, our phone is our identity, which also scares me when someone steals my phone or if I lose it or if I forget it. But, that's probably more me than, my driver's license number.
Yeah. Definitely a lot
So
more personal.
yeah. I don't know about organizations though. I think, my view on identities for organizations is eventually Google will win.
Have you ever worked with blockchain tech at all? Like, have you done
A
any?
little bit. A little
Okay.
bit, not for identity. I've seen it used for I've actually seen it used for DNS, which I thought was actually a really good idea.
Okay.
But I haven't seen it much in the identity space. I've seen it used for like, creating guaranteed transaction service kind
Yeah.
of stuff for that. And obviously mining. Well, what have you seen?
Oh, well, for me, I'm going all in on decentralized identity for the win. And like, but just like you said, like you came up with the whole, like, oh, you think it'll probably something like public private key infrastructure, you just have to sign a message to prove that you're the ownership of this thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
So, well, that's all Web3 wallets. That's exactly how they all work. And they're all
Ah.
disposable and they're free. So you don't need to spend $50 on a YubiKey. That's also, if you forget it, well, you're screwed. Or we need to have everyone in the agency have one. Well, now your cost just ramps up ridiculously. But at the same time, you can have 30 of them. So you can have one per account if you want to. You could have one that's actually tied to just a hardware wallet. It's not even in software. And you can lock that thing in a vault. And that's the only place it exists. So your level of security is really up to you as to how secure you need your private key to be and what you're going to sign it for. You can do multi-factor, multi-signature. So 5 people have to sign a transaction to approve it to go forward. You can do all kinds of fun stuff like that too. So I think once use cases come out and show what can be done with it, I think a lot more people will be more interested in that point. But I think we're at the very, very beginning. I don't even think we're in the adoption curve. I think we're in just a pure education, trying not to freak everyone out curve.
Yeah, I just feel like we are going to end up in a I mean, a very, I'll go with James Cameron, the James Cameron approach. I gave you my opinion on AI when I made the Terminator in 1984.
Yeah.
It's like Minority Report. Like I said, I think application services and as we interact with entities, I think the blockchain and a web wallet would work beautifully. I think there is going to be like this universal digital identity to track people, and I mean you
Mhm.
can see it in other countries that are a bit more
Oh, yeah.
autocratic than we are.
China.
Um, yeah, I think it's gonna, yeah, but I think honestly, I, I'm I think there's like a somewhat of a need for it. I mean, you can even see it with like your cable providers, right? Like they are for the most part your doorway in, or whoever your provider is, and they have a lot of your search history, that, and they've there's been a lot of fights about how much of your identity can they share,
Yeah.
what can they sell about your search history. So then I guess VPN services are going to kick up too. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's going to be an interesting world. Yeah, and AI. So, do you think AI is going to be the end of the world, or do you think it'll be harnessed and used for good?
Uh, that is the I guess if I was Dr. Evil, like I need the $1 zillion question. I'm I'm hopeful because I'm
Okay.
going to say I'm optimistic. I think AI, at least, and this depends, assuming we can figure out how to like create some sort of like shared responsibility model across the countries, kind of the way we're trying with the moon. Like,
Mhm.
hey, it's a shared resource. If we can develop some sort of like core principles, for it and figure out ways to embed them, I think we'll be okay. I think if we start to let it run rampant, it could be pretty scary.
Yeah.
I think we have time before, it actually takes over. But
So this
I don't
comes to
know,
like a
man.
morals and ethics thing, and I think this is interesting
Yeah.
because in IT, we never really had to worry about morals and ethics because it was just ones and zeros. That either the thing works or it doesn't work. We're just providing a service to make things easier. And now with all this AI and tracking and government, manipulation and being involved and tying to these corporations, all of a sudden now ethics and morals come to play in IT. And I think for a lot of us that are just, it freaks us out because like for me, personally, like I don't want to think about morals and ethics. I just want to do the thing I have to do and make it work and move on with my day. But now it's
Yep.
like it's all of a sudden we have to make decisions. So like let's say, I don't think Oracle is doing this, but I'm just using an example since you work there. Let's say Oracle's, hey, they're about to create some huge AI training model and using it specifically to target US citizens for government use for fining them for whatever reasons because they're breaking the law. Like the jaywalking thing in China. It's like, oh, you know what? The government goes to Larry and says, hey, we want a system that we can put cameras everywhere. And if people jaywalk, we can hit them up for $20. That's how we're going to make back this $33 trillion that we're deading out on it. Or, Larry's like, boom, we're going to make billions off of this. I can get myself another island. Let's set this shit up. And so he goes full bore on running this thing. Are you on board with setting that up because it's your job, or do you leave? Or do you try to
Uh,
change it from the inside?
Look, I think it's, I think I've actually dealt with that question. This is
Okay.
where I'm going to be very cautious, but I did express an opinion regarding something back in the day about what I was not willing to continue working on if we did do it. So I think
Yep.
I would probably speak with my, luckily I think in the areas we are, it's easier for me to find a new job than to try to fix it from the inside. I
Okay.
think it depends on the organization. I think certain organizations do allow you to change from the inside. And believe it or not, Oracle has changed from obviously what it used to be when it would just sell the database license and kind of strong arm people. And now it's much, much better. And we work so much better and customers like us more. So there is change and it can be used, but I would probably be more quick to just step out. I think
Yeah.
it would be, but the other difference comes is if there's an opportunity to improve something. And
Yeah.
I've had that opportunity with, like, as we're working with Cerner to provide feedback on architecture and security guidance. And in that case, I'm glad that I was able to step in and help. So I would, if they said we're going to just do this, do it. But if they asked if can we do this so that it's not going to just, I mean, we obviously, everyone wants to make money, but we're not going to destroy. If they asked that, how?
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be kind of my approach. I would, if there was like, oh no, we're going to do it this way, we're going to give the data to everybody, I would probably, walk out. But I mean, with the government, heck, probably no, I would never know, you know?
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Is there anything you want to plug? You have anything cool you want to talk about or anything? Otherwise,
Uh,
you know, I'm out of
well,
questions.
I actually will. So I'm actually wearing my Onug shirt, which
Okay.
it's actually really cool. So I think the other thing, and we were talking about multi-cloud, right, running across clouds. So
Yeah.
Onug has its fall conference coming up,
Okay.
and we're actually doing a multi-cloud capture the flag event
Oh wow.
there. So
So
it's going to
first off,
have
what's ONUG? Let's just start with that
oh
before we
yeah. So
do.
yeah, Onug is the Open Networking User Group. So they made a big splash. I can't remember when, developing like a lot of SD-WAN and Wi-Fi architecture. They're actually looking into 5G. They came out of the networking space, obviously, with networking,
Yeah.
but they've made a really big push into cloud now. And so like Microsoft, Oracle, AWS are all members, as well as you get like the security vendors of, I think Fortinet's a member, Cisco, and it's just really cool. And what we're really trying to do here is, help customers understand that multi-cloud is complicated. And what we
Yeah.
built there is something called um, the Cloud Security Notification Framework, which is an open
Okay.
standard on how to help you map like a CloudTrail event to a Oracle audit event, like giving a unified taxonomy to communicate. And what we did is we built an app for it. So there's a
Does that
conference. I would check it.
capture and consolidate logs across multiple clouds into a
Uh,
single stream?
nope. Because
Oh,
we
I
realize that
was
you're
like,
never
that
going
would
to
be
do that.
awesome.
Well, but that's a problem. Like what we realize is like, and this is what we're like, oh, we can write our own like, here's the problem. Cloud providers are not going to change what they're doing, right? It's too
Right.
hard for them to change their audit. And honestly, there's a lot of investment in collecting those logs already. So what we did is we created a visualization layer on top of it
Okay.
so that you can look at the records under the same like lens. So basically in Splunk, it's called a field alias, but this mapping allows you to basically say that like, authenticated principal is resource in ONUG, it's just resource.actor. But authenticated principal would also be resource ID in Oracle and anything else or in Java.
Hmm.
So it's really easy. So you can build searches that look at, I want to look at everything Josh did. I can just put in his UID going back to IAM, and I can see
Oh wow.
every record across every cloud as long as I'm sharing that
That's awesome.
UID.
And that tool exists now? Or you're
Yeah, it's
making it's in
actually in
development
the.
or
So there's a Splunk plugin called the Splunk. I'll
well, it's
give you
about to
guys
be
the
a
link
Cisco
for
plugin?
adding it in. Yes, it is. And we're using it as part of it, but I think it's great. Oracle's been really invested. We actually I get to spend my time working with them. We've had
Hmm.
some members of our product team help. I think it's a really great. To me, that's going to be the thing, right? Multi-cloud. We need to orchestrate. We need to do the normal stuff, detect, monitor, and prevent. And
So when and
detection's
where is the
honestly the
ONUG
beginning.
group? When's this happening?
Oh,
You
it's
said
going to be
October?
fall, October 23rd and 24th in New York. So
Oh,
I'll send you.
I'm there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe I'll
yeah,
come out. Why not?
yeah. It's it's a really cool conference, and I think if you sign up for the capture the flag event, we will be
Yeah.
doing also Cyber Jeopardy, or
Okay.
Cybersecurity Jeopardy. There will be one question about my favorite person in computer history, who's Grace Hopper, because I went to Vassar's. But so that'll give you one clue on one of the questions. You go. But yeah, it's gonna be in New York. Actually in Hudson Yards. So it's, if you're
Oh,
taking the
okay, cool.
train in, it's right
Yeah.
there. And yeah, and if you sign up for the CTF, I think you get a discounted ticket to
Oh, cool.
participate. So, and it's
Nice.
gonna be at night. We'll have beers and pizza, and hopefully be a lot of fun. And
So,
then you get to play with Splunk too. Splunk and Worldwide Technology. Well, actually, Worldwide Technology is sponsoring it. They're actually building out the lab with us and everything. So
okay. Yeah, they were one of my previous clients as well. I helped
yeah,
kind of move them down kind of a PAM strategy that they were working at back then. So
yeah. I hope
cool,
you should
man.
get Tim on to talk Pam.
That's not a bad idea. Well, you know what? You just started a trend. You're
Yeah.
nominating the next person that we should talk to.
All right. I actually got another. I got a lot of vendors that I've worked with that I'm sure would love to talk to you about this
Cool.
stuff. Like
Yeah,
it
man.
is cool. What's
I love having open talks and forums about this stuff because to me it's fun and exciting, and it's more fun just to
yeah.
chill and not be like, oh, this is our product and here's the sales pitch. Like that shit's lame.
Yeah. Oh, and check out our CIS landing zone too. For if you are using Oracle Cloud, check it out.
Okay.
Google CIS landing zone OCI. It's open source. We've just been cranking on, and we got certified by the Center for Internet Security as an assessor and as a configuration. So we're very happy to like be the open source arm of Oracle here. So I'm
Nice, man.
enjoying that part. I like to contribute back, and we actually take feedback and issues from the cloud. People have actually written code for us and we import. Oh, by the way, we use tabs, not 4 spaces. So if you are contributing to Python, please tabs only.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. I
right.
appreciate it. This has been awesome. Had a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I'll see you around in the world
Yeah,
sometime.
definitely. Yeah, let's sync up next time you're in New York, and I'll let you know. Well, tell me coming into the city. We'll meet up.
Cool, man. I'll see you around.
All right.
Have
See
a
you
good one.
later. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.